New York to 6 conference titles and 1 NFL championship. And in doing so, they gave a new definition to that formerly obscure word, defense.
It is the most tribal and universal of football fan rituals. Yet there are those among NFL historians who believe that this battle cry was first chanted in the mid-1950s, originating from the rafters of New York's Yankee Stadium. In a game that climaxed the NFL's first season of nationally televised broadcasts, millions of home viewers heard the deafening roar and watched a very responsive Giant defense. The Giants' crushing championship win over the Chicago Bears was the beginning of an 8-year era that saw a whole new type of slugging power come to the fabled house that Ruth built. It began when head coach Jim Lee Howell added a young Tom Landry to his already talented staff of assistants. Landry's innovative mind melded together with men like Jimmy Patton, Andy Robustelli, Jim Katcavage, Rosie Greer, and Dick Modzelewski to produce the NFL's most dominant and difficult-to-detect defense of its day.
They were the first defensive team that all of a sudden started putting the good athletes over on defense. Up to that time, the better athletes, especially linemen, running backs, were on the offensive side. And all of a sudden, they started putting a little better athlete. Then also, they went and started studying offensive formations and what teams were doing, which is what Tom does.
It was a first. Landry and that group had put together a defense that had certain refinements to it that the offenses hadn't caught on to yet.
One of those refinements was the creation of the 4-3 defense, designed to take advantage of the instinctive skills of middle linebacker Sam Huff. In this defense, the job of the 4 down linemen was to keep Huff free of potential blockers, leaving him free to act as a rover, whose task was to be in the vicinity of the football. This scheme was one of a number of ploys the Giants successfully used to neutralize their main nemesis, number 32, Jimmy Brown.
Sam was basically the quarterback of that defense, and he had the flair to understand that he was in New York, so he became an instant celebrity by attaching himself to my legs quite often.
We hit him whether he had the ball or not, and we knew that we had to stop Brown because their offense was built around him. Why shouldn't you? You know, the man averaged 5.2 yards a carry lifetime.
We had to stop Jim Brown to beat the Cleveland Browns, and we were able to do it because of the defense we had in those days. We played what we call the coordinated defense. We were able to shut down the gaps for him where he couldn't find the gap to get through, and we were successful, probably better than anybody. No one stops him completely, obviously. He's too great a back to have that happen, but we slowed him down enough so that we ended up in the late 50s of being in a lot of championship games, and Cleveland wasn't.
In addition to capably handling their rivals from Cleveland, the Giants' defense also became highly proficient at putting points on the board. This mixture of creative stratagems and game day opportunism endeared this unit to their fans. Along with the public praise and adulation, media attention was for the first time devoted to a defense. Giant defenders were not portrayed as mindless brutes, but rather as a team-oriented group of friendly, thoughtful, and articulate men. This high-gloss treatment, however, did not wear well with all of their teammates.
There was a lot of animosity, a lot of jealousy between the offensive unit and the defensive unit, because the defense really came into prominence for the first time, I guess, in the history of pro football.
In those days, they didn't even introduce the defensive ball players. It was only the offensive ball players that were introduced before the game. And it was always, you know, ladies and gentlemen, number 16 from Southern California, Frank Gifford.
In those days, when Sam Huff was maybe making 8,000 or 9,000 and fighting Wellington Mara to make it 10, I might have been making 18 or 20. That didn't sit too well with the likes of a Sam Huff.
There was a little animosity about that because we were doing, on defense, we were doing an awful lot of playing, and we were holding teams, you know, to 6 points and to 3 points. And we went 3 games, I remember, and never scored a touchdown offensively, and we won 2 of them.
At one period, you know, when we'd come off the field, Sam might say, see if you can hold them, and we'll try and score on defense the next time around.
Despite the presence of any ill will, those who came into contact with this unit grudgingly agreed that they were pioneers in the effort to bring teamwork and intellect to defense.
The most intelligent defensive club in football, New York Giants. Every man knew his position, knew what he's supposed to do, knew where he's supposed to help out.
They played together probably as well as any team I've ever coached. They had just a sense of feel, you know, between each other. It was a good football team. It was good talent, but it wasn't really any better than some of the teams in those days. But their ability to play together and believe in each other, the way they believed in each other, was tremendous.
In 1960, Tom Landry moved on to coach the Dallas Cowboys, but the men he left behind went on to play in 3 more NFL championships. Although the Giants came up short in each of them, their defense performed bravely, particularly in the bitter defensive struggles against Green Bay in 1962 and Chicago in 1963. Ironically, a dynasty both began and ended with a title game against the Bears. But while one era was passing on, a new one was dawning. Various retirements and trades closed this chapter of defensive brilliance. But a symbolic seed was transplanted with Rosie Greer's transfer to the Rams, where he helped give celebrity status to Los Angeles' suddenly famous fearsome foursome. It was a start of a colorful
league in those days, and the average salary was about $7,500 a year. Everyone knew everybody else, and rivalries were fought fiercely and frequently. And such an environment fostered great teams and exciting players. Some fun-loving guys, others not very nice at all. But this spicy combination made up a period in sports history that is regarded as the golden age of pro football.
The fabulous 50s, the Eisenhower years. A period when people took life and each other a little less seriously. A decade where the vision of America was tinted with optimism. Nowhere was this image clearer than in pro football. It was heroic, romantic, and nostalgic. The purest form of sport. Pro football became the new national obsession and burst into full flower in the 50s. For nostalgia buffs, the 50s meant fire wagon football, a merry-go-round of big plays, a circus of carefree and colorful performers. It was filled with magic moments and magical players. One half of pro football's all-time team played in this decade. Pro football in the 50s was not stylized or synchronized, but a wild game. A highlight film with all the penalties and mistakes left in. At the top, pro football bubbled like soda pop, effervescent and sweet. But beneath the surface, the game had a harsh, bitter taste. It was a rough, violent, often brutal sport.
And you get into that sort of a cannibalistic feeling. All you want to do is go out there and, like I say, you just want to kill somebody. I want to get him, I'm going to kill him. Not mean you're going to put him in the ground after, but you just want to kill a guy, boy. You actually froth from the mouth, and you're going to really put it to him.
In the 50s, the meek did not inherit this turf. There were bitter rivalries between teams and fierce grudges between players. One that festered for years concerned the Rams' Deacon Dan Towler and the Colts' Art Donovan.
I said, let's get Deacon Dan. That was our time. He said, fine. So here comes the Rams out of the huddle. Van Barken was the quarterback. He hands, fake hand off to Deacon Dan. He comes into the line. They pitch the ball out to a halfback, and Finn and I got Deacon Dan down on the ground. We're really going at him. So the official grabs us. He said, if you guys do that again, it's going to cost you $100. I'm going to throw you out of the game. We didn't know that Deacon Dan, he ran off the field. And they put the other fullback in named Tank Younger. And they both looked alike. They were 6'3", 240 pounds. They're both black, so unless you knew the number, you didn't know how they were. Same play again, we got him down on the ground. Now, I got his nose, and I'm trying to pull his nose off his face, and Finn is banging on the back of the neck. So all of a sudden, from underneath the pod comes, hey, he says, leave me go. He says, this ain't the Deke, it's the Tank. We had the wrong guy.
Players like Art Donovan could find something funny in a broken leg. They were undeniably violent, certifiably tough.
I lost 6 teeth on one play when I blocked the punt. He kicked me in the teeth and knocked all my teeth out. And I vividly remember that because I was looking on the ground for my teeth. And everyone was yelling, get in the huddle, Bob. You know, it wasn't get off the field, Bob. You know, get in the huddle. We don't want to call a timeout.
Number 79, Bob St. Clair of the 49ers, had a caveman aura, but he was no brainless brute. At 6'9", 270 pounds, he was a massive blocking machine. St. Clair credited his great strength to eating raw meat, an eccentricity which earned him the nickname, the Geek.
We used to go out and shoot doves, and it was all illegal, you know, in the season and so forth. And I would take the doves, and I remember one day, I had about 12, maybe more than that, 12, 15 doves. And we were plucking them and cleaning them, and I would take the heart, you know, and I was making a little pile of dove hearts over here in the corner. And then this kid from Nebraska came over and said, what are you doing with that pile of hearts? And I said, why, I'm going to eat them. That's why I put them over there. And he said, what, are you going to make some kind of a sauce? I said, sauce? No, these are real good this way here. You see these? And I put 2 in my mouth and was chewing on them and looking at them. And I thought he turned 3 different colors. I thought he was going to faint right there. He ran out of there. I'm sure that he would call back to his girlfriend or his wife or his mother or something in Omaha and say, there are cannibals out here.
The 1950s produced the most outlandish cast of characters in pro football history. A witch's brew of monsters, mavericks, and magicians. The most colorful team in the league was the Detroit Lions, a riotous bunch of revelers who loved wine, women, and song. Their party shaper was quarterback Bobby Lay.
One time we passed him at halftime, coming out for the second half in Baltimore. I said, Bobby, how you doing? He breathed on me. I said, Jesus, is that from last night? He said, I had a couple at halftime. So, you know, he was a character, but a great football player. Tough guy.
This blonde, slightly pudgy Texan played football and lived life in flamboyant style. In a city of working men, number 22 was a workmanlike quarterback who appeared to do nothing right except win.
I did do some things that I do regret now. As I always said, I went in the front door. I didn't sneak in the back door. It hurt my family some. That's the only thing. The publicity. Everybody knew me in Detroit, and I couldn't go anywhere without some conversation.
A teammate once said, when Bobby said block, you blocked. When he said drink, you drank. Lane and the Lions typified a sense of adventure, something that transcends statistics, a flair that endures in the memory.
Hit him, he didn't care. Play without a face mask. And then you really went after him. 3 of us hit him at one time, and they all holler, watch out, Bobby, here they come. And when he got him back in the offensive huddle, he kicked 2 of them. He kicked Creekman right in the legs. He was so near to Creekman for missing Marchetti, he kicked him right in the shins. Creekman stood there and took it.
Bobby was hot-headed and explosive. He played full tilt every moment and expected his teammates to do the same. Under his whip, the Lions won 4 Western Conference titles, 2 NFL championships, and became more important to Detroit than General Motors. While the Lions were consistently of championship caliber, other teams also shaped the history of the 50s. The Los Angeles Rams dominated the early years with a glamorous team that possessed more skilled players than any team of the decade. The Rams rang up points like a pinball machine, and the results of their games read like old-time basketball scores. In 1956, George Halas's Chicago Bears were primed to win a title with their bruising style of play. But 1956 belonged to number 42 quarterback Charlie Connolly, who passed the New York Giants to an NFL championship. All across the 50s stretched the shadow of the most dominant team, the Cleveland Browns. In 10 years, the dynasty created by Paul Brown captured 7 Eastern Conference crowns and 3 NFL championships. While the Browns were a model of excellence, a history of failure had marked the Baltimore Colts. The 50s Colts were victims of bad breeding, sired by the sad sack Colts of the late 40s and the dreadful Dallas Texans of 1952. These Colts were a bad seed. They were a collection of oddballs, a team with little character, but many characters.
Don Carlo, Sister Overna, Y.A. Till, and myself, we were roommates. So we had a big shower in this big bathroom, and we locked the shower stall door, and we filled up the shower all the way up to maybe about 6 foot. And we went over the top from the glass, and the 4 of us are in there. We were all, you know, swimming around, having a good time, and somebody hit the latch, and the damn door opens up, and maybe 100 gallons of water goes all over our floor and down the next apartment house, and the ceiling caved in. And you know how to pay for it. Tittle, we didn't have any money. And he was the only guy making any money, and from that day, he would never speak to us, really. He was tied in a clan with Lockjaw.
Head coach Weeb Eubank rebuilt this laughing stock of a team by drafting sure shots or taking chances on obscure college players. Tackling fullback Alan Amici, number 35, proved harder than knocking a tank off its tracks. And there was no defense against the acrobatics of Raymond Berry. The Pony Express began to roll in earnest when a racehorse named Lenny Moore became their number 1 draft choice. Wild number 24 added a new dimension to the offense. It was another eager rookie that made the dramatic difference. Johnny Unitas transformed himself from a $6 a day sandlot player into an NFL quarterback and transformed the Colts from chumps into champions.
We had a football team that, you know, laughed together, played together, lived together, liked each other. It was a rare combination of personalities and talents, and I think the Colt team in those years was the best place in the world to be. Great ownership, great leadership, and great players.
Baltimore won an NFL championship in 1958 and again in 1959 when they defeated the New York Giants. This marvelous team, which included 7 Hall of Fame members, crushed the Giants 31-16 to close out the decade. By the turn of the decade, pro football became part of the American culture, and the fabulous 50s will be remembered fondly for those monsters, mavericks, and magicians who played their sport with abandon, with delight, and with a touch of class.
He's really really angry. I don't think this one is clowning at all. It's a bad and an ugly scene, and it's unfortunate, I think, that it's happened in the middle of showing a classic fight between two extraordinary athletes. I think that Ali is probably clowning, but there is no question in my mind that Joe Frazier is not clowning.
That was not controversy for the sake of controversy. There was no agitation, although some people in print who were not in that studio had the audacity to call it a stage promotion.
Monday Night Football put Howard Cosell in the middle of another controversy. On September 21st, 1970, it all began.
I'm Howard Cosell, and welcome to ABC's Monday Night Primetime National Football League television series.
As a primetime series, Monday Night Football had to entertain. So along with the controversial Cosell, ABC hired Dandy Don Meredith and 1 year later, Frank Gifford.
I respect Don Meredith. I said earlier the task is to get a fix on sports. Meredith has a fix on life. Gifford's been my friend for 30 years. If I needed help, I wouldn't hesitate to go to Frank Gifford, and I would get it.
The threesome's emphasis on showbiz brought criticism from football purists, but the public loved it, and players such as O.J. Simpson got themselves up for Monday night games. Meanwhile, the Cosell, Meredith, and Gifford team blended beautifully. On this Joe Washington run, they were at their very best.
And there's Joe Washington. There it is Joe Washington. He's on his feet. He has great speed. There it is Joe Washington. Oh! How can it happen? What a football game this turned out to be.
Opinion of the broadcast team was not always positive, however. Cosell was usually the target of dissenters. At the stadium, people were just as expressive.
There is a vivid picturization of the excitement attendant upon this game. The number one in the nation.
Salvage.
The NFL Today is sponsored by Isuzu Cars and Trucks, offering both gasoline performance and diesel reliability. True Value Hardware Stores. True Value, more than just a name, it's our way of doing business. And by Federal Express. When you have a package that absolutely positively has to be there overnight, Federal Express. And now, Brent Musburger.
God, I got horses.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody.
Fourth down and 10 yards to go. Hang on to your hats. Here come the Steelers out of the huddle. Holy moly.
This is the story of 10 years of pro football. It's a story of champions, teams that set the standard for all the rest. And above all, it's a story about men, great men, whose runs set the records, whose teams won the titles, and whose magic made the memories that will forever be a part of the Super Sevens. As the decade began, a protest-weary nation said goodbye to the turmoil of the 60s. A spirited new era was arriving. It was a self-indulgent era, preoccupied with personal appearance and artistic self-expression. Pro football was a reflection of the times. It was an age of superheroes, where one mild-mannered pass catcher named William Johnson could doff his disguise and become Billy Whiteshoes. And above all, it was an age of innovation. Early in the decade, Kansas City Chief wide receiver Elmo Wright unveiled a brand new form of self-adulation. Before long, everybody was punctuating scoring plays with their own stylized steps. Sadly, the 70s would be without Vince Lombardi. Lombardi's legendary Packer teams dominated the 60s, translating Lombardi's fundamental designs into 5 world championships. Lombardi's death and the collapse of the Packer dynasty created a power vacuum in pro football that wasn't filled until 1972. Then, along came Don Shula and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins achieved greatness because Shula's emphasis on fundamentals made them into a team strikingly similar to Lombardi's Packers. His line's execution on the power sweep would have made Lombardi smile. His ball-control back Larry Zonka was cut from the same sturdy stock as Green Bay's Jim Taylor. His so-called no-name defense, like the Packers, didn't brutalize opponents. It simply didn't let them score. And finally, his quarterback, like Green Bay's Bart Starr, was a model of efficiency. Through 4 weeks of the 72 season, the Dolphins were undefeated. Then, Shula lost quarterback Bob Greasy to a fractured ankle. But just as Lombardi had Zeke Brakowski in reserve, so did Shula have backup quarterback Earl Morrall. The 72 Dolphins won 16 straight games and advanced to Super Bowl VII. There, only the Washington Redskins stood between them and the NFL's first perfect season. Defeated the Washington Redskins 14-7. the first of 2 consecutive Super Bowl wins for Don Shula. The Miami Dolphins, the new Green Bay Packers.
When you're feeling up and your friends are near, the last light, all you want in a beer, now ain't that nice, so nice, the best light on ice, tastes light and smooth, so smooth, and goes down so nice, let's get a last light.
Now Sunoco's Match and Win game has new prizes, more chances to win. Scratch 2 matching diamonds and win a Chevy Cavalier, an Air Canada Hawaiian vacation for 2, or thousands of other prizes. Collect all 4 color sections of the same picture to win even more prizes, including the grand prize of $25,000. At Sunoco.
Students with a Commodore VIC-20 at home have a distinct advantage because the Commodore VIC-20 turns your TV into the sister computer of the Commodore PET found in most schools. So even when they play VIC-20 games, they learn concepts that can lead to greater things. They can do their homework, write their own programs, and the computer time they get at home gives them a real advantage at school. That's the Commodore VIC-20 advantage. Shouldn't your child have it?
I like it. If you really like it, I really like it. We can help you get it. We're GMAC. We want it. We're GMAC Financing.
When it's time for that new family car, GMAC can help you get it with financing to fit your budget. It's available right here at your GM dealer.
If you really want it, we can help you get it. We're GMAC Financing. We got it.
Behind a very special pair of Levi's jeans, you'll find a very special symbol, a red tab, the color of a blue jean legend, a legend of fit, comfort, and style, of durability not just promised, but proved. It's a legend that hasn't changed in 132 years, cast in these rivets, pockets, and seams. Be part of the legend. Ask for Levi's red tab. The jeans are blue, the legend is red.
There are a lot of good reasons you should be watching Global News. Some of them are Truman, Tennant, Garvey, Dobb, Burgess, Anscombe, McAdory, Richards, Small, Banning, Brahma, Wilson, Adams, Wolf, Pockmersky, Jackson, McCowan, Burke, Darby, Newman, Bird. That's a news team that cares. Truman's team. And it all comes together for Global News just when you need it most. On Global News, tonight at 11.
Hash marks, a series of lines between which every offensive play begins. Before the 72 season, they were spaced 40 feet apart. In 72, the rules makers narrowed the distance to 18.5 feet. Their intention was to put more offense into the game. Their logic was that by giving wide receivers more room to operate, they would encourage the forward pass. Instead, they ushered in the year of the runner. Ball control was in, and a halfback with elusiveness was essential to success. Even more in demand were fullbacks who could string out pursuit, then escape down the wider field.
The 1972 season produced more 1,000-yard rushes and more total rushing yards than any season before. A vintage year for pro football's ball carrier. The decade as a whole produced some of the greatest ball carriers of all time, among whom 3 stood above the rest. One was Chicago's Walter Payton. The second was Houston's Earl Campbell. The third was Buffalo's O.J. Simpson. Among the 3 of them, there wasn't a single ounce of quit. Over the decade, O.J. Simpson's accomplishments were the most sensational. The Southern California sprinter had 5,000-yard seasons, 36 100-yard games, and became only the second man in history to rush for 10,000 yards in a career.
And now it's for the 2,000, boys.
And on a snowy day in 1973, he became the only man ever to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season.
O.J. running left. There it is. They did it. I just wonder if the 3 of us at this moment fully realize what it has been our great privilege to watch O.J. Simpson run for 2,000 yards in one season.
O.J. Simpson, the player of the decade. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the team of the decade. A team sustained by its defense. During the 70s, there was no tougher assignment in the sport than a close encounter with a steel curtain. Since their founding in 1933, Steeler teams were always hard-hitting. But 4 decades of issuing headaches had not produced a single NFL championship. Then the Steelers hired Chuck Noll. Noll's first pick in the '69 college draft was Mean Joe Green, a man with no fear. The following year, Noll drafted a small college quarterback named Bradshaw. For 6 years, Noll used the draft like an artist. with each stroke adding new dimensions to his masterpiece. And by 1974, Mona Lisa was hungry for a title. They were underdogs in the '74 AFC title game. They left Oakland with a conference championship. They arrived in New Orleans for Super Bowl IX like a college team at homecoming. The Minnesota Vikings didn't stand a chance. By Super Bowl X, they were in a class all by themselves. Pittsburgh Steelers, a young dynasty created through the draft, a team that would rewrite the record books before the decade was over.
Life goes on, and so can Archie.
He got a little confused here about this music there.
What was he getting at? He was talking about a rock group called who?
I don't know. The man never got to that.
You're on your way to comedy, down at Archie Bunker's place. Global's got it, Sundays at 8.
Budweiser salutes the people who keep Canada on the move.
Our best for you. There's no one else who does it quite the way you do. For all you do, this much for you.
Yeah, this Bud's for you if you like your beer with a clean, crisp taste. The Beechwood Age Budweiser taste and smoothness you'll find in no other beer brewed in Ontario.
For all you do,
this Bud's for you.
This is Canada's Navy at work. It's the vital work of peacetime protection and of wartime raids. Work that requires skill and precision under the most exacting conditions. And it takes a special kind of person to do it. If you think you've got it, welcome aboard.
there's no life like it. No, there's no life like it. No, there's no life like it.
Call us collect about a career in the Canadian Forces Navy. We're in the Yellow Pages under recruiting.
For thousands of years, one drink has been helping build up people while tearing down thirst. One drink, delicious, fresh as snow, satisfying, and irreplaceable.
The Information Center. May I help you?
The Life and Health Insurance Information Center is a public service that's really helpful right now. Good information about life and health insurance is more important than ever, what with new tax laws and inflation, and many companies bringing out new insurance